I think business is a pathway to global prosperity, right? It can help people, it can develop people, it can change communities, countries, right? I think business fuels it all. Like, it is the silo that all of that stuff sits in.
All right, Lawrence, can you tell us how you got started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, wow. How much time do you have? Yeah, well, look, I grew up in a small town, small farming community town, right? And all I did was work. That's sort of all I knew, and that's all my father ever taught me, right, was just to work. So I guess that's where it started, right? I remember being at high school and I was a musician, started playing music at school. As soon as I left school, I started booking gigs for bands in local halls, right? And selling tickets to that. And I think that's where it started. Even though I was doing stuff at school and, everyone does the paper run, mowing the lawns around your neighborhood. I used to pick plums and apples off neighbors' trees and sell those door to door. Like, all of that stuff's sort of a given, right? It's like the lemonade stand. I think I started to make some serious cash when I was a kid in my early teenage years, booking bands and charging $5 a ticket. And that's sort of, I think, where it all started. And then from there, it just sort of progressed and I didn't stop.
So where did you progress after that? What came after that?
Well, shit, I think about it now, I should have been charging $10 a ticket. But anyway, I would have 2x my money. But so I did that for a number of years, and then, and then I thought, well, what's next, right? By the way, that came to a roaring end because I booked all these bands and this hall, and bought all this alcohol, which we were selling, and we didn't have a license, right? So, and I didn't know that, whether you had to have a license. I would have been 17. So, so the police came and shut us down and said, "Do you have a license?" I said, "No, I don't." Then I locked the doors and ran away. No, I'm joking. I didn't do that. But then that sort of came to a roaring end. So then I tried to go to that next level and get bigger gigs and bigger concerts, but in another town. So I got on the road and started driving up to the big city and trying to organise bands to come down to play shows where I could charge $25 a ticket. Managed to do a couple of those, but I didn't really get a lot of traction off the back of it because there was a lot of moving parts, and I was just a dumb kid who didn't really know what he was doing. So I couldn't hook in the biggest band. So I started playing music, right? So, I was a musician playing music at the time, so I started playing a whole bunch of gigs, and then I set up a booking agency where I was booking bands and taking a percentage of the door, or the venue would pay me a take on the upside. So I started doing that, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of money in it. And then I got a job, and that job was really boring, and I hated it. It was working in a warehouse. So I was playing 2 or 3 gigs a night and then working in a warehouse during the day, and I think I did that for about 12 months. I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't. I thought, man, I've got to go somewhere else with this. And then I jumped on a plane and I flew to Australia and got the hell out of there. And I think I did that when I was 24, maybe 23, I can't quite remember. So I hung around that small town for probably too long. So, I think you've got to move, right? Because I was just hanging around with the same people, talking about the same things, doing the same things every day. So I felt suffocated. So I thought, man, I'm going to get out of here. It's a cool little town. The people are great, but man, dude, there's got to be more to life than this, because it was pretty boring. So when I was 21, I read a book. It was Dale Carnegie's book. And when I read that book, it just sort of changed a few things in me, and I thought, you know what, I've got to get out of here. And then I planned for I should have got on the plane the very next day because I didn't have anything holding me back, but I procrastinated too long, and it took me 2 years to get out of there, when really it should have taken me 2 weeks. So there's a lesson in that. But yeah, 2 years later, I had a couple of other jobs, did some stuff, right? It was nothing really exciting. I wasn't setting the world on fire, but I jumped on a plane and went to somewhere new, and that was a game changer. So I highly recommend people do that. Get out of the old and get into something new, right? Even if you're in an environment like a job or even a suburb that you live in, move to another suburb. every 2 years, because you're going to go to a different cafe, meet different people, you'll drive a different way, you'll see different things and be exposed to different things, even if it was that small. Or move to a different country. I would highly recommend that.
Just staying on top of that, there's a lot of lessons in that, brief summary of your early career. Like you mentioned, being shut down, by the cops. But with those sort of shutdowns and with those sort of failures, I guess, you've learned something from each step, would you say?
Yeah, well, you're gonna get punched in the face, right? So, and it's gonna happen more frequently than you expect, and you want that, because if you're not getting punched in the face, you're not actually doing anything. All you're doing is following the rules, and you're not doing much at all. Like I just said to the general manager this morning, I said, poor retention is a good investment in the business, and people don't see it that way, but you've got to move and shake, right? You've got to change things up a little bit, and when you do that, people are going to shake and things are going to go wrong, and then you're going to pivot, you're going to learn, and things will be better. And I think if someone leaves a business or a relationship, everything just gets better. And it's the same thing with business, right? I think if you go into business naive enough to think that nothing is going to go wrong, well, you're going to go out of business pretty quickly and lose all your money that you're invested. So you want to be cautious about that. I expect to get sued every 6 months. That's in my strategy. I have a fund for that, and I have lawyers ready to go. I expect that people are going to rip me off. I expect that I'm going to have a bad day and a bad week. I expect that sales will go down. I expect that everything that can go wrong in business will go wrong. And it will happen in 1 year. So if you're not resilient enough to be able to handle that, don't go into business. I don't know if you heard that adage, it's like, what is it? 90% of businesses fail in the first 3 years or 5 years, or whatever that number is. It's pretty true, because, and it's not that the product, the service, or the idea isn't great. And normally they're technicians that start businesses. So someone who's good at baking pies, I keep using this baking pie analogy, but someone that's good at baking pies opens up a pie shop, and 6 months later, they're out of business, because that person's good at baking pies, but they're fucking terrible at running a business. They don't know how to manage a P&L or manage the money right, hire people, or even keep them, or communicate well. So they go to business. So they do that wrong. So I guess in my younger years, I cut my teeth and I did a lot of things wrong. Pissed a lot of people off, lost a lot of money, got shut down by the police. And you learn those lessons, but if you don't make those mistakes twice, then you're in pretty good stead, and you can kick ass as you move forward, right?
So in short, you really you want to fail. You need to fail.
I don't think anyone wants to fail. I never want to fail, but I know that it's going to happen, because no one's perfect and you can't predict the future, right? So it's like, when someone gives us a hate comment on social media, right? I don't know why I'm doing that, maybe this. And then people freak out. I said, well, man, I expect it. I expect there to be haters, and if we don't have any haters online, we're not doing enough. You could judge the growth of a business by how many haters you have online. It's a crazy metric. But if no one hates us, then no one knows who we are. And if no one knows who we are, that means we're not big enough, right? So you just got to contextualize it and make some sense out of it. That's a bit of a crazy metric. That's a bit me, though. I'm a little bit like that, but a little bit aggressive in the market, right? But yeah, man, it's cool to make mistakes and just get over it. And what normally happens is people's egos get hit. Then it becomes an emotional thing, and then they sit on it for too long, and then it gets inside their head, and then they carry it around with them like a monkey on their back, right? But man, what a waste of time. Just don't do that. And that's simply a decision, by the way. So you just make the decision not to do that. I think the more mistakes you make when you're younger, the more resilient you are. As you get older, it's a little bit harder to come back from, but so make mistakes young, not when you're older.
How do you find that you deal with the stresses of these failures and make sure that it's not affecting you emotionally, so that way you can move forward?
How do you deal with the stresses? Well, you've just got to keep your mind on point, right? I think you've got to exercise your mind as much as you exercise your body, right? If you go in the gym 2 or 3 times a week, what are you doing for your mind, right? Because it's the resilience of the mind that'll make you handle those types of situations. So, the brain is a muscle just like any other muscle in the body. And I think if you want to handle stress and anxiety in high pressure situations, A, you've got to be exposed to them, and B, you've got to know how to manage them from an emotional perspective, right? Because it's the emotion that overcomes you, and then you make bad decisions. Like, there is no one I know who makes a good decision when they're drunk, all right? There is no one I know who makes a good decision when they're stressed, because your frontal cortex is bright red and you cannot process well. So it becomes illogical to make good decisions in that space, right? So, but even understanding how the brain works is a good start. Like that's what I did. I read books about the brain. I did a diploma in psychology because I wanted to understand how humans think, and I did that in my 20s, right? So education will get you through that, and stress, I think, is simply a decision. People are going to hate me for saying that, but I think it is, and it's a decision not to learn how to manage it. That's the first point. And the second point is, when you get stressed, you can make a decision whether you carry that for 5 days or whether you carry it for 5 minutes, right? Like when someone cuts you off in traffic and gives you the finger first thing in the morning, do you take that into the office with you or onto the job site with you? And do you start talking to everybody about it? Or do you just get over it very quickly? So the goal is to take something of stress that lasts that long and bring it down to lasting that long. And I'm pretty good at it now. Like, I might get stressed out about something. Like I am human, I think. But it lasts for 5 seconds for me because I just get over it, and I do that through practice, right? So, and reading books, I read books from some of the best in the business, right? So about psychology and mindset. So when you understand it, it's easy to contend with. So if you're not going to educate yourself about how to use your brain and control emotion, stress will overcome you. And it'll cost you money, and you'll have a pretty bad life. That's what I think.
Okay, so having a understanding and continuing to educate yourself, whether it be personal development stuff or whether it be through technical qualifications, that's what helps you develop that mental resilience.
Yeah, exactly. I think all that stuff works, right? Reading books and all that stuff, and listening to podcasts and following good people and staying away from the negative news networks and all that sort of stuff. All of that put together is what alleviates stress and pressure, anxiety, frustration, and depression, right? And depression's a big one, right? Like we live in a fairly woke society. I get it. People are going to hate me saying that, but look, we do. Things have changed. I understand it, and we have to run our game in business with that and be supportive to people, which we always are. But dude, if you want to get ahead anywhere, you have to understand and learn how to navigate the bad situations, right? Psychologically, financially, economics, a whole bunch of stuff, right? Government policies and things that change things in your life. Global pandemics is another one, right? So you have to learn how to navigate that. And the way that you do that is through good information and good data, right? So, but if you're gonna watch, free-to-air public television that just is all about negative stuff, what happens is it overcomes your perception of how things really are, and then what happens is you just start to spiral down, right? Because everything, the sky has fallen in, and life is hell, and woe is me, right? Like, so, I just say take off the poopy pants and you really need to just get focused, right? There are no excuses. Now, I understand that there's going to be people who chemically have certain things and ailments that they need to deal with. So I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is the everyday person who doesn't have an illness that is chemically defined, right? Especially when it comes to depression. So, and I know there's many elements to depression. I probably shouldn't be talking about it too much, but it can be controlled, I think. But even if you believe that and it wasn't true, you'd still be better off. Like if you believe that it could be controlled and that wasn't true, you would still be better off. It would be a placebo effect to a point, right? So why not just do it anyway? Because you would have nothing to lose. So, so that pressure, stress of business, man, it's pretty heavy. Like, dude, it gets pretty weighted, and at the top, you've got no one to talk to, right? So you're sort of on your own. So if you can't manage it on your own, you're in trouble. Any CEO, any founder who's running a big company, or even a small company, it doesn't really matter about the size, I guess, or a senior manager who has to make decisions at that top end involving people's incomes, lives, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, man, that's a lot of pressure. You have to learn how to do that. You're not born with that skill set. So education, yeah, definitely education is a way through that, for sure.
Right. And that education, that doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you work on, you're continuously going to work on.
Man, I hate reading, right? I've never liked reading, never been a reader. I've probably read 500 books, if not more. I don't know. I have a bookshelf, it's got lots of books on it. And I've read those books. Now we have this great thing called the internet and Audible. Well, I listen to books at 1.5x, right? So I can get through it faster, but all the information you need, you can access in the 21st century. I never had that when I was a kid, right? We had to go to the library to get a book. So you don't have to do that now. You can just open up Google, type anything you want, or chat GPT, and you'll get all the data that you need. So if it's that easy to access, why wouldn't you access it, right? So you should do that, and you should. Here's the thing, though. I'd rather have 2 or 3 guys that I lean into than 20 or 30, because too much information is not good. I think people have got access to too much information, and if that information is in alignment with this piece of information, people just get confused. So, and then they stop, right? They just stop. They stop doing everything because they say, oh, hey, this guy said that guy said that guy said that. And then all of a sudden I'm so confused because, none of those opinions make any sense to me. So I'm just not going to do anything. And I think that happens all the time and people don't know it, which is the unfortunate thing. It's because they're listening to Gary Vaynerchuk and then Andrew Tate. And they go, hey, and then Cardone and then Tony Robbins and then, they just don't know where they are. So, I vet my guys that I listen to. I listen to 3 or 4 guys at a time at any one time, and it's only about information that I need. And I don't go delving into all these people that, like Andrew Tate, I don't even know that dude, so I don't comment on him. Everyone says he's crazy and he's a bit of an idiot. But they say that about Kanye West too, and I don't follow Kanye West. So I just stay out of that stuff because I don't need to. I listen to people who I believe have delivered the goods, built the companies, like Warren Buffett. That's a guy that I follow, right? I think he's one of the best financial minds in humanity. I follow Elon Musk. These are the types of people I follow, their proven track record, and I just stick to that. I don't need to jump on social media and listen to some dude standing in front of a Lamborghini that he doesn't own, that he leased for the day so he can get his mates to film him talking about, I can make you a millionaire. Well, that's bullshit. I would not do that, and I would not expose yourself to those types of people. So go deep on that matters, right? And those are the ones who have a proven track record. So if you want to be a business guy, listen to the best business guys on the planet because your mobile device will give you access to them. So why would you not do that? But I think people are listening to too much because it's an information world now. There's access to all the information, and a lot of it is not good information. It's really bad information, so just be careful.
So it's just about focus. It's about getting your mindset right and focusing in on the aspects that you want to improve, and then finding the information that will help you improve.
Yeah, focus is a good word as any, right? I like the word focus. Don't listen to a whole bunch of information that you don't need in your life right now, because that just becomes a distraction. And then you go wandering off down a path because you got distracted, and then 25 years later, you realize that you shouldn't have done that. Like that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's true, right? It's like people get distracted and they lose focus of where they should be going. One day they realized it and then they lost it. So there's focus on the material you're consuming, listening to, reading, and then the industries you're working in, the jobs you're doing, and the people you're hanging around with. Right? I think there's focus with that. So hang out with the right people. They say you are some of the 5 people you hang out with the most, something like that. I truly believe that. I think that's 100% accurate because I think if you hang out with people who are doing drugs and not great things, you'll end up doing that just from peer pressure and influence, right? And it becomes habitual because you're with it every time you hang out with your mates. And normally when you're younger, you're hanging out with your mates a lot, right? So you're just going to be exposed to it, and at high frequencies, you'll end up becoming one of those people. So focus is man, it's critical.
Cool. So I guess going back to the start, when you say, it's about your environment, so it's about the people you're hanging out with. When you were talking about, slowly developing into a business, coming over to Australia, for you, was that, the mindset of, if I'm going to improve, I need to switch up my environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly why I left. I don't know, I think entrepreneurs that are watching this, right, they're gonna know. Like, you just know. Like, man, I always knew that I was gonna run my own business because I could not work for anybody else. So I sort of always knew that, and I think entrepreneurs have that. So there's two elements to that. The first one is the people who go start a company when they're 50 and start the cafe, they were never business owners. Because if they were true entrepreneurs, they would have done that when they were 20. So they're forcing it, right? So that's a pro indicator for me that I never get into people in business who have just decided to quit their job after 30 years and do this now. That's a red flag for me. But yeah, I moved because it's not that I was hanging out with the wrong people. Like, it's not about the people around you. It's not their fault. It's my fault, right? If I want to be a pro basketball player, why am I hanging out with amateur baseball players? Like, it just doesn't connect. So no disrespect to any baseball players watching this, but that just didn't make sense for me. It wasn't logical. So I just decided. My father was from Melbourne. I said, man, I'm going to go to Melbourne. Didn't even end up in Melbourne. Did go to Australia, but just went to a different city. But I think that was the lowest hanging fruit for me. So and a plane ticket back then was really expensive. And it was, I think the Wright brothers just had flown their first plane. That was a joke. But yeah, so it was a bit of a thing as a young kid, to buy a ticket to drive to the airport, which is 3 hours away, 3.5 hours away, pack up your whole life and move to another country, right? Like, it sort of scared the shit out of me, and I was excited about it all at the same time. A little bit like AI. But it was cool though, right? Because when you get here, I stayed in a caravan park. Like, I had no money. I probably had about $1,000, and that was it. And you just get into it, right? It's like that immigrant moves to another country story and they have $5 and the shirt on their back, which I think is an awesome story. If you're fortunate enough to be able to have that, but I don't have that. I had $1,000, but I bought a car for 400, so I was mobile, and all I had to do was find a job. So that's how it happened.
But it's a case of, if you have a goal, you don't need money to start. If you have a goal, you'll run to it. If it's something you really believe in.
Well, I always think if I lost every penny, you can't take away my courage, my knowledge, and my experience, right? Like, you can't do that. So I could just start again. So it's never really bothered me. I'm a bit of a risk taker though, so I take risks. So getting on a plane with $1,000 in my pocket to me is a risk, but it's not a big one, because I can beg, borrow, and steal to figure it out, right? So which is what I did. But yeah, man, you just got to do it. I don't think you need the money. I think the money, when you say I need the money, I can't do it until I get the money, I think that's just an excuse, because in most cases you can do it without the money, or with a smaller proportion of the money. Hey, I want to go and live in another country, but I need $23,500 to do it. No, you don't. You just need an airfare, and just figure the rest out later. So then it's about courage, though, right? It's like where's the courage? I lived in a goddamn caravan. You know what I mean? Like, for those of you in the US, a trailer. They call it a trailer, but which was horrible. I hated that. But what are you going to sacrifice, right? Like, so, dude, if you want to do big things, you got to learn how to sacrifice. You got to let go of some stuff and some inhibitions, and get a little bit scared and frightened, and just run forward. Right? I'd rather take the longer path than the shorter one. I'll be honest with you. Now that you're older, though, you don't want to do that. You want to take the fastest possible way when you have some money, because you don't want to be doing $10 jobs. But man, when you're young, you should be running, you should be running like a stallion, right? Like just go for it. So that would be my advice.
Cool. So you're talking about, risk. Coming to Australia was a bit of a risk, but it's paid off. It's obviously paid off. You've now got 3 companies. So scaling that up, how do you now manage risk inside your different companies, your different businesses?
Actually got 5 companies now, and just about to set up another company, an AI business. So how do you mitigate risk? Is that the question? How do you?
Yeah. Well, something like going into AI, I imagine that poses a risk because it is new technology.
Yeah, look, okay, well, let's just talk about that, right? So the AI company. And the reason I want to do an AI company is because when you start an AI company, you're going to do something about it, right? It's like, so that's why I'm doing it, to force myself to do something in that space, because I think that technology, as I've said before on another app, it's like the internet all over again, right? This will be the biggest breakthrough in humanity, will be artificial intelligence and AGI and all the other types of AI platforms or technologies that will come out. So what better way to do it than to force it? Like, I don't know a lot about AI. I've been doing a lot of research. We've rolled out a component of AI in our business, and we're using that. But if you commit to it first, you'll figure it out later. Like, that's my thing, right? Commit to it first, figure it out later. Like, I don't need to know what it's going to look 12 months from now, what it looks like. I don't even need to know what it looks like in 4 weeks from now. I just need to make one decision and then take another step forward. So there's too many people out there fucking worrying about the future, and that they worry about stuff that hasn't happened yet. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't know why people do that. Well, actually, I sort of do know why they do it, but my advice would be that they should stop doing that, because when you worry about things that haven't happened, that's pretty neurotic, and it's going to stop you from doing great things, right? So we're going to make a lot of mistakes in this company. We're going to burn a lot of money, but we're going to figure it out. And setting up the company now means we're going to do a business plan. A business plan now means it's going to force us to think about it. When we do a business plan, it'll figure out where we start, and then we'll get a date for when we start that, and then what skills do we need to do that, and then how much is it going to cost, and then when do we launch, and then what product are we going to build first. But we don't know that now. We've just made a commitment to start an AI company. And when I say we, I mean me, but because people think I'm crazy to invest money in something that I know nothing about. But I don't need to know all about it. I just need to find the right people who do, right? So my advice would be start it now and figure it out later. Grant Cardone says that, by the way, all the time, which I think is pretty awesome.
It just comes back to, I know you said it before, especially in the videos as well, but you need to start with one thing.
Start with one thing.
Just need to start, the rest will follow.
Just take one step, and then you'll figure the next step out later. And it's iteration after iteration, right?
Yeah.
I've spoken about that before. I think that's really critical. And that's what entrepreneurs do. They have no idea what they're doing half of the time, but they're very fast to figure out solutions, and then to figure it out to get to, minimum viable product or whatever it may be, right?
And I guess that plays into the rest of the companies as well. Like, looking into this AI, starting this AI business is one step towards innovation. Can you tell me a little bit about how you've innovated in the past in the other companies or the other businesses as well?
Yeah, well, it's all innovation, dude. It's like, it's all innovation. Everything that you do as an entrepreneur is innovation, because you're constantly trying to move forward, right? Which requires a lot of innovation, a lot of growth, a lot of development. You're building things constantly, and you're running to that next thing, right? So innovation, you underline it, put a box around it, put it in bold and make it red, right? It is everything. But here's the cool thing and the dangerous thing. The cool thing about innovation, it makes a company exciting. Everyone's having fun, man, this is awesome. Imagine building all this new AI tech, how cool that will be, and everyone's going, hey, look what this can do. That'll be great, and I look forward to that day. But the problem with that, though, is innovation forces change, and a lot of people fear change, right? Those are the non-entrepreneurial based psychologies, by the way. They like to be either static or move slowly and surely forward, right? but innovation means you pivot and you break things, and people get emotional and people get upset, but that's a byproduct of success, right? So in a big company, you have to contain it. That's why Google have Google X. They don't put Google X inside other businesses where they should be innovating, because they know that innovation, they want to keep it a little bit secret, I get. They got a lot of IP they want to protect, but they don't want to shake the company. That's why you don't see lots of press releases from Google X. Look, I know it's IP and they don't want to tell the market what they do, but I remember seeing an interview with Sergey and Larry, and they were just saying, yeah, look, innovation will scare people, especially those who are not used to it, who are slightly older. The younger generation a little bit more open to it. But man, it freaks people out. They go, oh shit, I can't handle this, it's too much, they're changing things on me all the time, I need to go do something else. And they'll go and find a job that just settles, right? Where they're doing the same thing, repetitive tasks every day. So depending on the size of the company, you just got to be cautious with it. But I think companies who don't innovate in the 21st century, considering what's happening in technology, you'll be gone. And I'm saying, man, like, think companies like BlackRock, Accenture, Deloitte's, whatever it may be, of these big companies, right? They're not safe. I don't think any company's safe in the current landscape. I think companies will have to reinvent themselves. So innovation is now a byproduct of sustainability. That's what I believe. So commercialization, as we know it across the planet, will change. It's happening in America now. Like Silicon Valley's pretty dead at the moment. Things have changed, all the U-Hauls have moved out and gone back home, and everything is starting to rework itself slightly, and it's going to change the finance sector, it's going to change the banking sector, it's going to change real estate, it's going to change operational components of large organizations, and media. It's going to change media. So get ready to innovate. Innovate or die. I think there's a poster around this office that says innovate or die. And I truly believe that.
So it's a case of, if you're comfy, if you're happy where you are, you should be concerned. You should be worried.
I think you should always be worried. Yeah, I think, it's complacency, right, is what you're saying.
Yep.
It's like people who, I don't even know whether people know what their definition of happiness is, right? But if happiness in that definition seems like happiness is, stay under the radar, don't shake me up too much and I'm happy, well then fine. There's going to be markets like that where that you can sit in like that, and there'll be back-end office roles. So you would go and do those roles. Here's the thing though, the capital expenditure spent on those roles is going to drop considerably. So the whole, the basis of salaries and wages and award systems will change. I truly believe that. Now, no one said that. This is something that I see, is that it will change because the roles are going to change. So when we go into a technology environment that's growing like AI, it's going to change a whole bunch of things, right? So the education has to come through to train the engineers at high frequency and high volume, right? Because more of them are going to be needed. So the people in lower socio-demographics and lower socio jobs will need to be placed in other areas, right? So that's a bit of a paradigm shift when it comes to the changes in earnings in certain industries. So the industry structure will change. And when that happens, salaries will change and wages will change. It will have to. Because for example, if you were to hire an AI engineer now, it would cost you a minimum of 175,000, right? Or 150K. Let's say US. Now, what is it going to cost 5 years from now? It's going to come down, right? Because the more of them you need, but here's the thing, the more of them you need affects the market, but are they going to be in the market? How long does it take to train those types of engineers when the technology is moving towards that singularity? Say in 3 years' time or 4 years' time, when it gets to that singularity, there's not going to be enough people to service it. So those jobs are still going to be high end. They're not going to come down in price. So businesses are going to have to subsidize. If you're going to get into innovation, you're going to need to push funds into that and then all the other jobs are going to go away. These jobs, things are going to change. The people who have these jobs now will not have those jobs in the future. And that's not great. And I think displacement will take 10 years for the economy and the market to settle again and to start moving forward. I think it's going to be different. I think there's going to be a lot of money to be made. I think the economies are going to be stronger, but I think there's going to be some disarray in the workforce. That's how I see it.
Okay, so what advice would you give to the average Joe in terms of preparing for this, preparing for, say, the next 5 years of changes?
I would just get to understand it, right? That's the first step. Just read about it, understand it, find out who the players are in the market, what the technology is. And if you're a truck driver, you need to do some research around what the future of a truck driver looks like, because that's going to change. I don't think there's not going to be many roles that stay the same. I think there are going to be some that will last longer than others, but I think all roles will change eventually. It's like in China and the US, they have McDonald's stores that don't have any humans in them, where all the food is made by robots. And the whole facility, including the drive-through facility, is automated using artificial intelligence and robotics. It's actually in operation now, and then there's more than one of them. There's quite a few of them, and it's across 2 different continents. You know what I mean? So how long is it going to be before that happens here? Like, how long have we had the self-serve, devices inside the local supermarket? They've been there for quite a few years now. We're used to that, and that's just going to 10x. So, my advice would be to learn how you're going to be affected, find out where you can pivot to, and then learn that. So if you have to go to night classes, do online training, do some type of education, you should do that. Here's what I think though, there's a couple of roles that will still be there. And one of them will be roles that are in leadership management. I think as things change, leaders and managers are going to be more valuable in the market. So if I was you and you have no technical skills, you want to get degree qualified or diploma qualified in leadership management skills, because those are the people, and project management skills, those are the people who will be running the teams which will be employed by the companies and the consultancy companies to build a new enterprise, a new country enterprise or worldwide enterprise, right? Someone's going to need to manage that. And those are going to be high-paying roles, and they're going to be worth more now in the future than they are now. So your average general manager now that might be on 180,000, they'll be on 280,000. So I think that will just increase, because here's the thing: the company is going to save money on salaries, right? So their capex will change, and it'll pivot into something else. And they'll spend more money on technology and innovation and hardware, bigger servers, more CPU power to run their organizations than they will on human power. So they're going to be saving the $55,000, $65,000 admin salary, because now it's being done by an AI that does it 100 times faster with 100 times more accuracy. So those jobs, as soon as those jobs go, they'll divest that money into other areas, and it'll happen so fast your head would spin. And I think we're getting close to seeing that in the next 24 months. That'll be my take.
So it's really just learning skills to stay relevant in an ever-changing market.
Learning skill, but still know what those skills are. So you got to go and do the research, right? Like, do the research. Just
start with one thing.
Just start with one thing. Yeah. Like, go onto YouTube and type in, how is AI going to change my career as a truck driver? And you will find 100 interviews from specialists talking about that one thing. So I would suggest that people go and do that pretty quickly. Yeah. Yep.
So you mentioned roles like leadership and management. They're not going to be as heavily affected as something like old mate working behind the counter at Macca's, right? Where would you go to learn something like that?
Learn something like what?
Where would you recommend going to learn or doing a diploma of leadership and management?
Oh, look, there's many places you can do that, right? You can Google that as well. Open up ChatGPT and type something in there. I don't know. Yeah, you've got to find a local training organisation, or it doesn't even have to be local, right? Find a training organisation who offer it, buy it, and just do it. Like, you don't need to do classes. You can do it 100% online. It's normally, a blended learning thing that you can do when you're working. That means you're going to have to put in the extra effort, right? So, I own 2 training companies, so you could contact us, right? And we could help you out with that. Like, and what I've noticed is leadership and management is a pretty popular program, right? So, people should just do it. Like, even if it's a bad investment, sort of education is never really a bad investment. You've heard me say that, and I'm not trying to sell courses here, but there's going to be a lot of courses around this whole AI thing. I know Python is sort of the leading sort of type of code that's going to be running this, but it's not just going to be Python. There's going to be other things in play that are around the coding component. You know what I mean? Which is the structure, the strategy, the execution, implementation, managing the teams, recruiting the teams, finding the talent, improving recruitment processes to find the talent, money, finance, economics. There's all these things attached to this change in industry, and it all comes down to people are going to have to retrain. The whole world is going to have to retrain, and all the training companies are going to make a lot of money out of it because. But here's the thing: the training companies have to really step their game up and find courses that are going to be relevant, right? Like, you can't run the old courses anymore. People will need, and you'll see courses change and become more tech-based, I think, and courses in coding and Python coding and other types of coding, development and dev in general will increase because no one knows what to do with it. Like, I'm putting together a strategy document and a business plan, and I don't know what to do with it. Well, I know a little bit. I know the first 3 or 4 places we can execute or implement. But yeah, education. Go into a course, figure it out, spend the money, see it as an investment, and move fast. Otherwise, you might be in trouble. Like, if you're 45, even 40, 45, it's going to change in your lifetime before you retire. And it's going to change a lot. So you need to retool now.
Why business?
Good question. Well, look, I think business is a pathway to global prosperity, right? I think it can help people, it can develop people, it can change communities, countries, right? It can have serious impact. And I think behind all the massive change in the world, whether it be solar, this whole green movement that started many, many years ago, whether it be technology, healthcare, energy, right? So I think business fuels it all. Like, it is the silo that all of that stuff sits in, and I think it can help people, and I think it can change the world for the better. By the way, it can also do some damaging things, but because we work in a world of economics, I think business is an economic vehicle, right? So, and the bigger you are, the more powerful you become, and the more things that you can do, right? And things for good. You normally find most entrepreneurs, most successful entrepreneurs, they start off here as, go-getters, sort of bulldogs, we're going to build this, we're going to do this, and then they end up giving it all away. And I think that's great, and that's a progression of the entrepreneur. They start here to make the money, they start to figure a few things out, then they start to build some stuff, and then they end up here doing some great things with it. Look at all the biggest, most successful people on the planet have done that. History dictates that people are essentially good, and business owners and successful billionaire entrepreneurs give a lot of their money away, and that money helps everybody. And I don't think people see that. I think they see capitalism as a negative thing, but without it, you wouldn't have the freedom to raise the money to drill the wells in Africa, or to set up the solar farms that we need to, or to get, to move to battery-powered vehicles, for the environment. That all comes from money. You have to build that, and things are expensive. So I think business is a vehicle to world prosperity. And I think it's cool to be able to build something from nothing, employ a whole bunch of people, where you're helping them sustain their lives. You can teach them some things, and maybe they move on, or maybe they stay with you forever. I think that's pretty fucking awesome. That's why I'm in business.
So it comes down to contribution. at the end of it.
Yeah, well that's a word I use a lot, right? Contribution. And it can be in many things. Contribution isn't just about economics, but I think contribution can be personal, emotional, it can be as a company, it can be as an organization. So yeah, contribution is a good word for it, for sure.
So I guess that probably answers this question, but then why education? Why an education business?
Well, that's one of a few different companies. Look, I can't sell sugary sodas to teenage children, man. I just can't do that. Like I couldn't wake up in the morning and get motivated to do that, or selling vape machines or cigarettes to kids, right? That just doesn't work for me. So it's a moral choice. And I think I came across education, I fell into it really. I was working in a company as a director. It was a recruitment business. That was a pretty successful business. And I got involved in some of the training components of that business. And what I found is when I did it and I saw the people that we were training, and it had a lot of contribution to them, where they could increase their income, they could get that promotion, that affected their family, that means they could have a better quality of life, go on that holiday every year or whatever. I thought that was pretty cool. I sort of like that. And I like the administrative components to training as well, where you can find the best possible information on the planet and you can make sure it gets into the hands of the right people, right? So maybe I'm a control freak, but that's why I do it. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's full of contribution, and it just feels good. And I think people should do things not that because they feel good. That's not the right way to do it, but I think they should do things that have contribution. So this has both. So I'm sort of lucky. But yeah, look. But what I will say, I think I know what you're trying to get to. Contribution is not all just about contribution, right? Because sometimes you have to monetize a business before you can get to contribution. Like I said, right? Like Bill Gates started off here, and he was a ruthless businessman, and he was ruthless. Like I have never seen someone as aggressive as Bill Gates in the market. But look at him now. Like he's set up so many charities, he helped so many people and organizations around the planet, and he's the nicest dude ever, right? So people change, and I think with entrepreneurship, the small people that have that skill set who build big companies, I think they're all like that. It's like the win of the game, right? You want to win, and that's part of the fun. And if you can contribute and help some people along the way, well, man, why would you not do it? I think people have a duty and an obligation, and I don't think people see things like that anymore. I think they used to. I think I have a duty and an obligation to contribute to my community, to ensure that the business is successful, so the people that it pays get a paycheck every day, right? And then I can grow that and I can contribute that. I see that as an obligation. I don't see that as anything else. It's not about me. Yeah, great. The money is good, and helps you. You can drive a nice car, you can live in a nice house, you can buy nice things, but those are just material assets, right? I know people who have a shitload of money and who are completely fucking miserable. So it's all about balance. And one thing to understand with that balance is that when you go through that journey, people will hate you for it. Like everything in this company is my fault. I only had a meeting with some of the sales guys yesterday, and I said that to them. I said, by the way, everything I'm talking about is my fault. No one here is to blame except for me. So you got to take the responsibility for that, because it is my fault. Because the company doesn't exist without me. I'm the one who started it, so of course it's my fault. So if you can carry that burden, you can build a big company and you can contribute a lot, right? So if you've got the skills to do that, you have an obligation. So you should go and do that. Stop procrastinating and just make it happen, right? And you'll just figure it out. And by the way, you don't need to plan it for 3 months. You just need to start it on day one, and then you'll figure the rest out later. This is fun.